core group of the guys in the dressing room, you fed off them. Your Robbie DeMaios and your Scott McCrady's and your Dean Schnaus and your Trevor Lindens and Mark Petersons and Ryan McGill's. Mark Fitzpatrick was a very passionate goalie that played both Memorial Cups. We had a core group that you could feed off any guy in every night, and they brought you up and they carried our team. It wasn't one individual or two individuals. We had every single guy going and believed in one system. I truly believe that came right from the top, and that was our general manager, Russ Farwell, who was the best general manager that anybody could play for at the junior level. And he put together a different group every year with different coaches and made it happen.
I think Russ just understood it. He got it. He understood the different parts of a team that you need. You need experience, you need young players that are coming up, you need great goaltending. You need a mix of everything. And junior hockey it's cyclical. You go in, in spurts where you have an opportunity to win, and when you have that opportunity, you try add, and that's what Russ would do. He gets your attention, and he gets you to keep his attention, and that's what's important, for young guys. Real good fundamental, play by the rules, be good people. All those things come into it with him, which, those are lessons that I take with me today, things that he taught us. He was probably the biggest influence in a lot of our careers, just being able to put together those types of teams that were eventually going to have success.
Medicine Hat wasn't big at that time, so it was an easy town to kind of control the guys, where in some of the bigger centers now, the kids can get a little off on their own or lost. We had Brian Maxwell the second year. Then he went to LA as an assistant coach, and then we had Barry Melrose. So, pretty unique to have that type of turnover with coaches to have the success we've had, and I would have to credit Russ Farwell hands down. He had an amazing way about him. His insight and his knowledge and the way he could, get a spark out of you or get a little bit more out of you. And then the coach obviously would follow up with, same type of thing or reinforcing that. So it was a neat partnership that they had with that.
Winning was the be-all, end-all, and there was no second place. And that was great, for all of us. I think it's led to great things for most of us in our lives moving forward. This was the culture. This is what we were after. This was the goal. And, we were very fortunate. It's not an easy trophy to win. And we were very fortunate to achieve our goals 2 years in a row.
We had a real good group of guys. A lot of great junior players that maybe didn't go on to have real long established National Hockey League careers or pro careers, but great junior players. Mark Fitzpatrick was a phenomenal goaltender in junior hockey. We had a real strong defense with Dean Schnaus and Wayne McBean and Scott McCrady, guys that were, first-round picks, real talented offensive players. Dean Schnaus was more of a defensive guy, but real tough, great leadership. Trevor Linden speaks for him, what he's done in the National Hockey League was, he was just a young kid back then, and you could see his potential, and so there was a lot of excitement around that with Trevor. And then there's guys like Darren Taylor, like unsung guys that were on that team, Kirby Lindell, who was a guy that scored some big goals for us in the Memorial Cup. Just a great group of character guys.
When I was 16, the first year when we lost out in the league finals, we had a nice tight core. We had a great leadership of an older group teaching us how to play a 7-game series and the depth and the work ethic that it takes to get there. So the second year when we ended up winning our first Memorial Cup, we had a really good core, and then we had a young guy coming in named Trevor Linden that boosted that young core to the next level.
He was a hard worker. He set goals for himself. He knew that he wanted to get to a certain spot and a certain place, and it lined up for him, and that's what he wanted to do. And he had a great family and a support system and teammates that, again, like we helped each other, right, and supported each other. And so I think, there was no surprise of his success for sure.
We had a group of forwards that, could do it all. When you think of Neil Brady's, Mark Peterson's, Rob DeMaios, Ron Benora's, and we were a close group. We were a good team. We were well coached. Barry Melrose that year did did a heck of a job.
There was no outsiders on any of the teams. Credit management for that. The guys that were brought in fit into the scheme and fit into the culture and bought into what we were doing. And this was the goal.
In the Western League, you needed to have a little bit of everything. We had skill, we had toughness, we had real good goaltending. So we had a little bit of everything, and just a real good, solid coaching. We had a group of guys that was just willing to do more than the guy next to him, and that was the reason we won. And again, that goes back to our general manager, it goes back to our coaches. They instilled all that in us, and fortunately, everybody really took it to heart, and we had the right mix, and which allowed us to have success.
It was only a 3-team tournament. Oshawa was the host, and they actually won the Ontario League that year, so we were down to 3 teams. So, we played the Quebec team a couple times there. Oshawa beat us in the round robin, and it's one of those scenarios. Everybody says, given a 7-game series, who wins? We were fortunate enough. We regrouped, and it wasn't too many times in those years that we lost 2 in a row.
There were maybe 4 teams, I think, that won back-to-back, and the only one prior to us, I think, was the Smeal and Beck sort of New Westminster Bruins, and so there was motivation to do it again. The neat thing was that you were able to learn that program and how it was passed on, and then pass it on to the next group, and again figure out with new personalities and new personnel how to be a close-knit group.
I knew we had a good team, and I knew we had a good core from the previous Memorial Cup team there. It was a great program. You're playing for a great coach in Barry Melrose. You got a great GM, like I said, with Russ Farwell, and a core group of guys that a number of those guys went on and played in the NHL. So I was very excited to go back to Medicine Hat.
I just think that everybody understood their roles. It took time. When those kids went away for World Junior, I think everybody else felt like they had to step up, and everybody did step up, and we won a lot of games. And then I think after, when they got back, it was okay, we're gonna get going.
We were in 8th place at Christmas. Barry Melrose was pulling his hair out. He was like, what is this team? You guys all think you're so good. You won a Memorial Cup. Yeah, I remember him tearing a strip off us in New Westminster. We were on our western swing at Christmas, because we always did it at Christmas. And he tore into us, prima donnas, this, that. You're in 8th place, 6th or 8th place. I mean, we were nowhere to be seen. I mean, we were just going through the motions. And then that was the wake-up call. And all of a sudden, then it was like, okay. And then we went on quite a run.
So everybody that won it the year before, they had the right frame of mind. They had great, like I said, the veterans on, Dean and Beener and Scotty and Trevor and even Mark Fitzpatrick. I mean, those guys. So they had the right attitude. It took the coach and it took the new players time to adjust and move forward. And then, matter of fact, at the end of the year when we played Saskatoon, beat us out for first place in the Eastern Conference. So everybody thought they were the favorite. We hadn't beat them much all year, and we ended up beating them 4 straight. The hardest thing in that tournament is to prepare for your opponent because you don't know them. Then the hardest thing is to try to get your team, or try to be a team that gets through the adversity the quickest, because you can't dwell on anything because of how fast the tournament goes. So I really believe that the team that takes the adversity in stride and doesn't let it affect them, they're the team that's going to get through, because you have to move forward, because you're not playing in a 7-game series.
You can have a game where you don't play as well and bounce back and get on a roll. And so in the Memorial Cup, it can't really, you got to bury the last period and hope that you come out flying. And
you got to have your emotions in check. You got to be able to fight through adversity and not have too many peaks and valleys. And that's the biggest thing I learned as a player going into those tournaments, or going into those long series, that you got to make sure that no matter what happens, you got to have a short memory, and you just got to keep going on the same path that you think is going to keep you successful.
The experience of being there before helps a lot, and the core group that we lost in the finals, it gives you that desire and the urge and the passion to get back there, because you didn't quite accomplish what you wanted to the first year. So the first year that we won the Memorial Cup in '87, we did draw on the experience, and it was pretty exciting for the whole group. And then obviously the second year in '88, when we won the second Memorial Cup, some of us drew on the previous 2 years, and we had a new core group of guys and some older guys that we traded. We had a group that had been there before, had won before, and took what they had and passed on to the other guys in the dressing room, which helped make it successful for a second time in a row.
Windsor, which was the perennial favorite that year, I think they were 40-0 at one point, or 40-1 when we ended up meeting them, and they were a juggernaut to win the whole thing, and we fortunately were a pretty determined team ourselves.
We were just in awe of them because they'd only lost 4 or 5 games all year.
They had a great winning record, and it was in Ontario, and lots of support and family and all that. And so we used that as fuel. We had a new coach in Barry Melrose that year, and he brought some of that pro sort of personality and that pro sort of thinking, and so it was right for our group. We had a bunch of guys the year before that got drafted, and were excited and thinking about the next level, and he was able to kind of harness all that and bring it all in to make sure that we had the same goal in mind.
So we had to play 3 games in 3 nights, and we were the only team that had to do that. And Barry was really vocal with the media about how the draw was set up, and it was all in favor of Windsor, and we had to play that 3rd game against the best team in the country. We ended up losing that game, but it was a fairly close game, but he didn't feel that was fair. So that was motivation for all of us. We said, okay, if we win the next game against one of the Quebec teams, it was Hull at the time, we're going to get another crack at these guys, and we're going to get a little bit of rest, so we'll be ready and we'll have our best game. And that's really what happened at the end of the day, was that we weren't happy about the draw. We weren't happy about the way things turned out, but at the end of the day, we were ready to face them at the end.
Maybe that was a benefit for us losing in the round robin, is we got to feel or figure out, I guess is the better word, what they're about. What's Windsor's strengths? Where can we take advantage of their downsides, if there was any?
Didn't start out well in the final against them anyway. We were down, I think it was 3-0 in the first 7 minutes of the game, so that wasn't a good start, and it didn't look good for us.
We took some undisciplined penalties. Me, for sure, I took a 5-minute major. I think Adam Graves was on a breakaway, and I tried to take his head off and ended up splitting half his ear off. But we were just not a great team in that game. And then the reason I say that we have great veteran leadership and we had great character is we were down 3-0 in the first 6 minutes of the final game against Windsor. So, you're down 3-0, 10 minutes into the game. What are you thinking?
We'd been down 3-0 to a lot of teams throughout playoffs and throughout the season, and we knew we had the team. We also had the power play that could score 3 goals. So there was no panic. It was the first period. So we were a high-scoring team. We had a lot of firepower. We had 3 solid lines up front. We had 5 solid defensemen that just rotated, and sooner or later we were going to get the goals and they were going to go in. And one of the things we weren't doing in the first period was shooting the puck. So in the second and third period, I remember Barry was just get the pucks through, get some bounces, they'll start going in. And that's exactly what we went out and did. We executed our game plan in the second and third period, and we took the game away from Windsor.
We came back, and I think that there's an opportunity here for us to be good. Now, nobody ever thought it would be a 7-6 shootout, but we were real solid.
Windsor to this day will probably say they would beat us in a 7-game series. We would strongly disagree, but hey, that's hockey, and that's why you play, and that's the beauty of sports in general, is on any given day, anybody can beat anybody.
I remember winning, and Dean Schnauth and I looking at each other, and we were exhausted. We were just so tired, and we were proud, and the jubilation was still there, but there was more of a sense of pride and just being proud to be able to do it back-to-back.
They say the Stanley Cup's the hardest to win. The Memorial Cup, you don't have guys for 3 or 4 or 5 years. It's a short window, and so it's a very tough thing to win, and to win it back to back was pretty amazing.
This was something special to do it a second time. You know, there's only, I don't know what it was 5 or 6 teams in the history to ever do that, and we were one of them. And that didn't sink in till years later, actually. It's even now to sit back and think about it. It was a really difficult thing to do.
You don't quite realize the magnitude of it until you do get a little bit older. And then if you are fortunate enough or are in hockey, you realize how hard it is to win that, not only once, but twice. So like when I got into coaching, it became totally special to me of what we did, because I saw how hard it was to get in the playoffs, how hard it was to go through the playoffs to even get to the big dance.
The Memorial Cup is, well, it's exactly what it says. It's a memorial to people that, you know, gave something up for the rest of us. You know, that was their hard work, or what they did. And, you know, for us, it's our hard work achieved something, and to be handed a Memorial Cup and what that stands for it's important.
The people you meet, the characters that you go to war with, the management or people that influence your life, you know, there's a whole long list of those as you go along the way.
It was pretty cool to be able to say you won your last game of the year. Not many teams can do that, you know, one team a year gets to say they won the last game.
For a kid in Medicine Hat that dreamed of playing for the Medicine Hat Tigers, to not only to play for them, but win a Memorial Cup in your hometown, not sure it gets any better.
It's something that you carry on the rest of your life, and you're always known as the Double Cup Memorial Cup team of Medicine Hat. It's something that I think is whether or not you went on and played in the NHL, the American Hockey League, or played in Europe, or retired after junior, it's something that every player that played on those two teams can be very proud of.